We will, together, create police reform and make America free again.
Taking a live look this morning over at New York City. That's where we go for our next story. A man fleeing New York City police officers on a motorcycle died Wednesday after a sergeant hurled a plastic picnic cooler at his head from close range, causing a violent crash. That all according to authorities. And of course, we have our Fox 5 New York team standing by for us live with the very latest. Good morning, Briella. What are we learning?
Yeah, Giacomo, we're actually up in the Bronx. This was unfortunately a sticky situation that ended in complete tragedy. Eric Duprey was attempting to get away from police after a buy and bust operation gone wrong, but his family says that doesn't mean he deserved to die. Was barely able to hold back the tears as she explained the gaping hole her brother's sudden death has left in her family.
Welcome, everyone. I am Leroy Truth for Leroy Truth Investigations. I just moved into a new place and I don't have my studio set up yet. However, I had to share this video with you. Extremely disturbing, depraved. If there's nothing that's a tipping point, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. For the NYPD and their sadistic, predatory, soulless behavior toward we the people. Now, an NYPD officer is being investigated after throwing a cooler at a drug suspect who was driving on a motorcycle, killing him. The drug dealer was set up by some NYPD narcotics cops and some sting operation, and the guy who was set up with this narcotic cop got on his motorcycle and he took off. The police love the mantra, comply or die. They don't say it, they just do it. Comply or die. So this man deserved the death penalty because he ran from the police. Because of the drug war, which isn't really a war on people. It's a whole other story. I don't condone drugs, I don't support the use of drugs, but I do support stopping the freaking drug war. It has failed, not only failed, it's increased. The drugs that are in this world, it hasn't ended, it hasn't stopped, it hasn't reduced it at all. However, this gentleman, he was running from the police, and from what I understand, it was a police officer who wasn't even in uniform. He saw this guy running from police, and he took a cooler. See if I had something here, like a cooler, and then chucked it, threw it at the man fleeing, and threw the cooler at the man's head as he was driving away on his motorcycle, causing him to lose control of the motorcycle, crash into a parked car, and die. A horrible, horrific, violent death. The sergeant who did this, Sergeant Erik Duran, E-R-I-K, Erik Duran, was suspended without pay. But you know the police unions are plotting to get all that money back once they get him off this, if he's charged, plus extra pay, plus a promotion. The Sergeant Erik Duran was suspended without pay just hours after the death of 30-year-old Eric Duprey during an alleged drug bust. Surveillance video shows the moments Duprey drove past an NYPD officer not in uniform on a scooter. You can see the officer throw the cooler, causing the debris to fly off, and crash violently into a parked car. When are you and I going to say enough? And we said it. No, it's enough. NYPD, we are coming for you. We are coming for you to hold you accountable for this depraved behavior. You don't protect the public, you murder the public. And in this report, and this is a Fox News report, Fox News is in collusion, just like all of them are, NBC and MSNBC, CNN. They are bootlickers. And they made a point to say that this gentleman who was murdered by this police officer, given the death penalty for fleeing the police, that he had some prior arrests. So they want to make sure that you have context that this is probably not a good person. So he probably deserved to die. Absolutely wrong. Here's the report.
A live look this morning over at New York City. That's where we go for our next story. A man fleeing New York City police officers on a motorcycle died Wednesday after a sergeant hurled a plastic picnic cooler at his head from close range, causing a violent crash.
Imagine this. The sergeant sees this guy coming, knows he's probably the police behind him. His adrenaline starts just rushing up. The endorphins are coursing through his body. He is getting so incredibly excited. He's probably drooling at the thought of, I get to do violence towards someone who's not a cop. Because there are cops, the thick blue line gang, and then everyone else. All of us Americans are others. He gets to do something to an American person. And he hurls this cooler at close range, crashing into the head of this guy, and dead. Murdered by this cop.
All according to authorities. And of course, we have our Fox 5 New York team standing by for us live with the very latest. I want to go out to Briella Tomasetti live this morning over in Brooklyn. Good morning, Briella. What are we learning?
Yeah, Giacomo, we're actually up in the Bronx. This was unfortunately a sticky situation that ended in complete tragedy. Eric Duprey was attempting to get away from police after a buy and bust operation gone wrong. Now, keep in mind he has 2 prior arrests, one for felony assault, another for drugs, but his...
Keep in mind he has 2 arrests. Make sure he's painted as a bad person. Make sure his character is assassinated. Again, I'm not supporting people who deal drugs. I don't support that at all. I don't support drugs. But this is a setup by NYPD, and whatever NYPD does, they make it worse. And they're happy they made it worse. Because I'm sure when this cop hit the guy that was on the motorcycle with the cooler, he was probably like, yes, 3 points. And his fellow cops were giving him high fives, great job. Not that that was so out of context with what had happened. This man posed no threat to human beings. And if he was being chased, people who are chased tend to run away. And cops have got to stop chasing people who don't pose an imminent threat of danger to society. You got to stop that.
Emily says that doesn't mean he deserved to die. Was barely able to hold back the tears as she explained the gaping hole her brother's sudden death has left in her family. It's my only brother, she told reporters in Spanish outside a makeshift memorial in the Bronx, now adorned with candles, flowers, and photos. Eric Duprey was killed after being knocked off his motorcycle by a police sergeant during a drug bust. According to the NYPD, Duprey was caught selling narcotics to an undercover cop on Aqueduct Avenue near West 190th Street in Kingsbridge Heights at around 5:30 Wednesday evening. The department didn't mention exactly what drugs he was accused of selling. Police sources say Duprey took off to avoid being...
You see the lack of transparency? What drugs were they? What were they? Cops know what drugs they were. If they were serious drugs, they would have said it. Constant cover-up. Police need to be under our boot, not the other way around. Not acceptable. We need the transparent truth, all of us, we the people, right now.
Apprehended until he was stopped in his tracks by Sergeant Erik Duran. Duran, who was standing on the sidewalk in plain clothes, allegedly tossed a plastic picnic cooler at Dupree's head, causing him to lose control of the bike, hit a parked car, and fall to the ground. Video taken at the scene, which we've blurred because it's graphic, shows paramedics carrying his limp body onto a stretcher. He later died at the hospital. We don't accept it. We can't believe that police who supposedly will protect us, take care of us, are the ones that kill us, said Dupree's older sister.
The police who are supposed to take care of us and protect us are the ones who kill us. Very wise words, very true words.
Born and raised in the Bronx and part of a Puerto Rican family, he leaves behind a wife and 3 young children. Just hours after Duprey was pronounced dead, the NYPD posted a statement to social media reading, quote, New York City Police Department Sergeant Erik Duran was suspended from duty without pay following a fatal incident in the Bronx on Wednesday afternoon involving a man attempting to flee from the police on a motorcycle. The state attorney general's office is also investigating Duprey's death. The New York City Medical Examiner's Office is now working to determine the exact cause of death. According to the New York Post, accept it. We can't believe that police who supposedly...
Whoa. I just hit the wrong button there. They need to determine the exact cause of death. I don't think you need a deep investigation and hundreds of thousands of dollars to determine the exact cause of death. He's riding a motorcycle. A cop violently, out of context with anything that this man did wrong, violently throws a cooler at his head. Causes the motorcycle to crash, go out of control, causes him to go out of control. Violently crashes into a parked car. I think it's all pretty self-explanatory there.
The state attorney general's office is also investigating Duprey's death. The New York City Medical Examiner's Office is now working to determine the exact cause of death. According to the New York Post, an internal memo was actually sent out within the NYPD warning that this incident could spark an intense public reaction, even on arrest. Eric Duprey's family, wants that officer, that sergeant, to be formally charged and put behind bars. They want to see much more than him being suspended without pay.
Do you want that too, ladies and gentlemen? Do you want that officer to face justice? Should it be the Old Testament eye for an eye? Maybe he's driving down the highway on his scooter and someone throws a cooler at him. I'm not saying anyone should do that. Don't do that. But what would happen to you or me if we did that exact same thing to him? We wouldn't be suspended from our job without pay and then brought back with probably back pay and a promotion. We would be rightfully arrested for that depraved act of violence. And it would have been absolutely wrong for us to throw a cooler at that sergeant's head. Wrong. And if it's wrong for us, it's wrong for them. Real simple. Operating under deprivation of rights and the color of law. That is the theme of police in the United States, and that is especially the theme of the NYPD.
Now we're live outside the 52nd Precinct. Giacomo, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Briella, and any word yet on whether or not there's any planned protests in the wake of this incident over the weekend or anything in the future?
That was certainly a big question leading into today's live shot. Right now, we haven't seen anything. The NYPD, in that statement that it put out, also said that it plans to launch a full and transparent investigation.
Have you had enough that the NYPD is going to launch a full and transparent internal investigation? No, not acceptable. It's like, as I said many times, it's like you're in high school, and the teacher says, okay, class, for the entire year, you can grade your own homework and test papers, and I will accept any grade you give me, including if it's an A+ every time. Part of my police reform demands are get rid of qualified immunity and get rid of internal investigations. All investigations have got to be done by a third party with no conflict of interest whatsoever. Period. And also Terry versus Ohio and Pennsylvania versus Mims. They also need to be overturned. Continuing.
Investigation. So we're going to be watching this very closely, certainly throughout the weekend and even into next week.
We'll certainly be looking forward to that. Briella Tomasetti there with our Fox 5 New York team, following the latest on really strange story and quite the tragic one there in the Bronx. Thanks so much, Briella.
Of course.
And that's the Fox News report. Now, here's the thing. Here is the thing. Who caused that man's death? Now, if you were to go to yahoo.com news and look at that, read an article they have there, and look at the comments, The wolves are out there. The bootlickers, en masse. The man deserved to die. You know, don't run from the police. Comply or die. They love that. They love that. Comply or die. He deserved it. We don't live in a free country, ladies and gentlemen. For all you bootlickers out there, as people have said, back the blue until it happens to you. Back the blue until it happens to you. These are not isolated incidents. This is my tipping point. What that cop, Sergeant Erik Duran, did to the man who was murdered, Eric Duprey. Enough. NYPD has to come down. There has to be protests. I encourage protests in New York City. Peaceful protests. Loud, peaceful protests demanding accountability. You can't go to the cops to change things. It's, as I've said, it's like telling a rattlesnake before you put it in its pocket, oh, by the way, don't bite me. And then you get bit and say, why did I get bit? You promised you wouldn't bite me. It's a rattlesnake. It's the culture. It's the nature of policing in the United States of America. There is no fixing it. And I've been using this term police reform. There is no reforming it. We need to actually recreate an entire new paradigm. And there is a need for some type of group because there are evil, bad people in our world. We have to take them out of society. But police, mostly, they don't focus on them because they hardly ever prevent crime. And they only solve about 50% of crimes when it's been committed. They come in after the crime, investigators. So we need something to protect society from the evil people, the depraved people who do murder and other violent acts toward people. But we gotta completely dissolve this current system. Predatory. Traffic stops are all predatory. We've all been stopped by cops. They're always searching. What can they get us on? What can they get us on? The letter of the law. Or they just make shite up. Leroy Truth, I am. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. Please share this video. Please call your local politicians, your state senators, your national U.S. senators, your congressmen, congresswomen, your mayor. Demand our police reform. No qualified immunity. Getting rid of internal investigations. All supervisors have to be personally liable, criminally and civilly and civically for anything their underlings do. Getting rid of Pennsylvania versus Mims. Getting rid of all the elements. Terry versus Ohio. Body cams have to be required with all police officers, and if they do anything to the footage, take their body cam off, delete footage, mute their audio, fired, boom, 1 year in prison, boom, mandatory. And maximum security prison, general population. I'm Leroy Truth. See you next time.